Welcome back, Team DWC. It's your boy TWP Popcorn. Y'all already know what time it is. 10 a.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. Sunday, aka another day in paradise. Y'all know when to come look for your boy. We keep it consistent corn in the building. By that, I mean, every week, those three shows are damn near guaranteed. Shout out to my schedule being my schedule because that's what my schedule is. We got highlights and videos for you throughout the week in between. And shorts whenever I feel like doing them. Right now, I'm not doing shorts, so, it is what it is. I mean, we do shorts sometimes, and then sometimes we don't. You dig? I mean, you gotta have options. I mean, you ain't got options, I do. Let's go ahead and get into the video because we got some good topics today. So you already know we gonna get that cracking.
Strain, whatever you want, you can get. Indica sativa, never rolling plain chain. I know some people, if you want drop 50, we ain't gon' cop any. Little mama got plenty, so many strain, puffing the flame, nothing but dro. One for the brain, one for the body, one for the soul. Running with strange, keeping the party under control. Up, away, flying, how far are we gonna go? Smoke team in the building, got 'em is what the deal is. Recognize coming with Burns, Felix, fulfilling county boy, got the liquor. Castle was on the fader, Stevie came with the greenery, mixing multiple flavors, whatever you want, homie. Tell me when to say when. How about you and your friends? Come get with me and my friends and keep it real with me, girl. I don't want to pretend like this is a new thing. Really, that's what it's been like.
One of 4 places busted here in Smithfield.
It's been a 4-month undercover investigation looking for the illegal sale.
And a historic hearing to decriminalize marijuana took place. None of those bills survived.
This is really just not a priority for people. It's also not a priority for the leaders.
This industry is trending downward due to a competitive and saturated market.
Jobs in the marijuana industry have declined over a 3-month period.
What's happening is that when you have growers that are also competing, the growers are saying, well, how can I beat this grower and get a better price?
In today's show, recently proposed bills to legalize herb in Indiana have failed. Nearly $40,000 in flour was seized as business licenses were revoked and 4 people were arrested in Virginia. And jobs appear to be declining in Michigan. But despite this, the Black Hawk Community College is offering cannabis courses to help students enter the booming industry. All that and more in today's show. But let's start off right here where recently proposed bills that we actually discussed on this channel to legalize herb over in Indiana have actually failed.
It was a huge talking point heading into this legislative session, but it seems dreams of those wanting to legalize it will not happen this year.
And that's despite Governor Mike Braun expressing openness to legalization for medical reasons. Fox 59 State House reporter Hannah Adamson shows us why it's not being considered this session and why some advocates say they still have some high hopes for the near future.
There's always next year.
Heading into this session, Republican leadership warned they'd seen no compelling cases for legalizing marijuana.
This is really just not a priority for people. It's also not a priority for the leaders of Indiana.
Weeks after a Republican-led coalition pushed for meaningful marijuana reform and a historic hearing to decriminalize marijuana took place, none of those bills survived.
I don't believe in doing, if you guys know, policy based upon revenue. I think you do good public policy and you deal with the revenue, and that's how I feel about the marijuana issue.
We actually have a lot of momentum.
Joe Elsner with Safe and Regulated Indiana says despite what's happened this session, 30,000 people have joined their coalition in the last 4 months.
Obviously, we're not getting what we want this legislative session, but I'm really excited about the progress.
The advocacy group Indiana Normal echoing those sentiments.
We did have a lot more bipartisan support across the board, and that was really important to see.
According to an LSA fiscal analysis, one legalization bill that failed could have brought up to $200 million in new revenue to Indiana in 2026.
As great as Indiana's been fiscally, there's always challenges, right? Education always needs more money, infrastructure needs more money, law enforcement, public safety.
One bill that did pass would set a THC threshold to determine whether a driver was under the influence.
And that's an important hurdle
to this conversation, and so that's actually a big win to see that continue to move forward.
House Minority Leader Phil Giaquinta says his caucus will still pursue other avenues this session to legalize medical marijuana.
We'll keep trying. I mean, we have a whole second half. There's an amendment process, too, that we can always, there's an opportunity. We'll do that because our caucus is in full support of that.
So despite that bill failing, there are positives that we can take from this, and that is that a lot of these bills are actually Republican-led initiatives, so in that sense, we're able to see that there's a more bipartisan support for legalization of herb, and I think that's fantastic. And even if the bill does not proceed in this session, hopefully in the next session, in the near future, we can see some sort of positive changes. Now, what we're seeing that's not so positive is what's going on over in Virginia, where $40,000 in flour was actually seized, business licenses were revoked, and people were arrested. And over in Virginia, as of July 2021, simple possession of herb and home grow cultivation was officially made legal in Virginia. But that does not stop people trying to mess things up, and that's exactly what we see in this situation, where smoke shops are actually selling herb without licenses. Now, this is obviously a problem, but check it out for yourself. Let's have a look at this report.
Narcotics investigations developing in Smithfield, and several businesses are at the center of it. Smithfield police tell us officers went to several vape store locations today. Then your side's Andy Fox explains what we know so far.
Smithfield police here at Planet Tobacco, one of 4 places busted here in Smithfield for the illegal sale of marijuana.
Smithfield Police Chief Alonzo Howe.
It's been a 4-month undercover investigation looking for the illegal sale of marijuana.
The investigation also snagged Smithfield Tobacco and Vape on South Church Street, Discount Vape and Tobacco, Smithfield Plaza, Tobacco and Vape, Cigars and CBD and Kratom on Bench Church Boulevard.
We have found marijuana at all 4 locations.
As you can see, the show of force tremendous at all the sites. People kept coming up and asking what's going on.
Well, the vapes was being sold to juveniles, and that's what was the initial complaint. And from that, we also received a complaint that marijuana was possibly being sold, and so therefore that's what led to the undercover investigation.
The first to be arrested, an employee who allegedly sold marijuana.
And was the employee that you arrested one that was told to you was selling the marijuana?
I believe that is correct.
The chief has this message to those selling dope.
The message is that the illegal sale of marijuana, it's not tolerated. As such, the business has been shut down for the illegal sale of marijuana in violation of town ordinance.
The signs are up at the 4 locations that state the businesses are now closed.
To my knowledge, the business is closed for being in violation of the town ordinance for the illegal sale of marijuana.
The chief says those arrested are not admitting to what they are charged with.
They admit to selling the marijuana?
No.
Admit to selling the vapes to underage minors?
No.
The police chief says the 4 businesses that were busted today, the future of them, very uncertain as this investigation continues. In Smithfield, Andy Fox, 10 on your side.
Now, clearly, this is a situation of people taking advantage of the laws that are put in place. Selling herb without a license, selling vapes to underage kids, that's obviously a problem. And that's why we're seeing a lot of lawmakers trying to crack down, because of these rogue elements, a few bad apples trying to spoil it for everyone. Now, I've been out to Virginia multiple times, and I have seen shops, but not only limited to Virginia, but in other states, doing this same sort of thing. So let me know what you guys think about that. Drop it in the comments down below, and if you guys are getting value from this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support us further, join the ICANN VIP Bean Club or cop some merch from the merch store. Now, it's clear that the industry is booming. We're seeing flour being sold at gas stations, smoke shop, vape, all over the place. But in one place where we're seeing a slight decline in jobs is over in Michigan. Now, a lot of you guys know Michigan has got some great laws when it comes to legalization, but oversaturation can definitely be a problem. So let's have a look at this news clip which came out a couple days ago.
New tonight, for the first time in Michigan, jobs in the marijuana industry have declined over a 3-month period. 13 on your side's Kiara Patterson spoke with 2 cannabis experts tonight about the decrease. She joins us now with the reason why this is happening. Kiara.
Juliet, experts believe the marijuana industry has reached its ceiling due to a competitive and overly saturated market.
I think we may have reached the maximum amount of people who would like to use marijuana at this time.
While consumers enjoy the perks of historic low cannabis prices in Michigan, Ricardo Sacco from Knox Dispensary says for cannabis businesses, it's a whole different story.
What's happening is that when you have enough dispensaries that are competing with each other, and then you've got, you know, a ton of growers that are also competing. The growers are saying, well, how can I beat this grower and get a better price?
Michigan's marijuana industry is experiencing a historic first, with job numbers declining since November. Michigan State University human medicine professor Jamie Allen believes the cannabis industry is trending downward due to a competitive and saturated market.
It reads as there's a lot of product on there, people are not buying it. And so we're seeing huge amounts of reduction in retail prices. And of course, that's going to drive profit margins for these companies. Unfortunately, they're probably going to have to be cutting the jobs.
According to online database Monitoring the Future, marijuana use among teens has declined since 2022. Professor Allen says that medical marijuana sales have also decreased, and there's growing uncertainty around the substance.
We have a lot of people in prison for minor offenses with cannabis, and many of those people are people of color. And those populations are already afraid for a number of really significant reasons right now. So I can understand why there is increased anxiety and potentially increased fear around cannabis right now.
Sacco says Knox's dispensaries in Michigan haven't been affected by the job decline, and he hopes the cannabis industry will recover soon.
We have our up and down weeks, but we're not seeing, you know, our sales really suffer. I don't think that there's any risk of us downsizing. I think if anything, we might need to hire a little bit more for the summer months.
Kiara Patterson, 13 on your side.
So it's clear from that report that oversaturation in certain markets is a problem and jobs are declining in certain industries. But what we're noticing is that home growers are cited as a reason for some of these problems. So to me, that does not necessarily mean that a lot less people are actually using medical herb, but rather a lot less people are buying it from the dispos. Now that can be for a number of reasons: increased prices, increased taxes and regulations. People are just finding a lot better, cleaner product at home when they grow it themselves. There can be tons of reasons for that. But what we do know is that the industry tends to go like this. It goes up and down. And overall, I do think that the industry is trending in the right direction, but there's obviously issues when it comes to things like oversaturation that will have to be monitored as we move forward. And a group that I think that understands this well and has a forward-thinking view is the Black Rock Community College, where they're offering courses for people to enter this booming industry. And what I found pretty interesting about this course is that it's actually a 9-week-long online course about the growth, distribution, and development of the herb. So let's check it out.
Well, new tonight here on The Current, we are turning to a cannabis cohort. Right now, Blackhawk College in Moline offers 3 fully online cannabis courses, and it's all supporting a growing industry across the country. Joining us now is Dr. Richard Bush, Associate Vice President for Economic and Workforce Development at Blackhawk. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we dive into Blackhawk's classes, let's start with the industry as a whole. Just how fast is this growing?
It's growing very fast. Across the nation, there are about 420,000 jobs that are supported by the cannabis industry. Whereas in Illinois, we have, as of last year, about 30,000 positions supported by the cannabis industry. And it's expected to grow by as much as 65,000 to 65,000 positions in the coming years.
That sounds like a huge economic impact as well.
It's huge. It's very huge.
So what are the 3 courses that Blackhawk is currently offering?
We offer these 3 certificates, one in extraction and production, another in retail, and the other in cultivation.
And the other courses talk about growing both indoors and outdoors.
Correct.
And then the other one was all about production. What goes into that?
Well, they do the extraction of the THC and other elements from the cannabis to create the various products, whether they are edible products or lotions or creams or other products that may be sold through that process.
Okay, so Blackhawk right now offering these 3 different courses. They're all entirely online. They take about 9 weeks.
It's fairly self-paced, so the students can absorb the information in a pace that's good for them. Usually our students are able to complete it within 9 weeks.
So a 9-week course that seems relatively affordable over in Illinois, and it'll touch on stuff like distribution, growth, production, all that stuff. So it seems pretty interesting to me. Let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know what you guys think about the rest of today's stories. I want to find out what you guys think about all of it, because we're noticing a lot of competing trends in the industry right now. But there's one trend in particular that's really worrying, and this could signal big trouble for home growers. So check that video out, because it's coming up right now.
introduce you to great resources and fabulous guests all along the way. Today we got both. A guest that's going to be talking about some fabulous resources that he's using so that you can help grow your health, business, and your wealth. Today's special guest has a greener thumb than old McDonald himself. The plants that this gentleman grows will make anybody say E-I-E-I-O. Now, when it comes to understanding agriculture, George Washington Carver has reincarnated himself in the form of a man from Missouri. When it comes to growing things, he makes the Jolly Green Giant look like a meat. It's time for today's featured guest, consultant and agriculturalist extraordinaire. This time is it for TWP.
Hey, welcome back.
That's it, close up to the head.
Hey, there you go.
Great introduction. I'm trying to do what I can do.
Shouts out to my video sponsors. Y'all know to go check out the Superfood Parents. Shout out to the big homie. We was just finna get ready to say something about him.
Like Fox Farms, though, like I noticed, like, so if you're going to plant a plant in some Fox Farms ocean forest, you're sick. You plant a plant in there and you fetch it out for like 2 months and you get that plant monstrous and you're ready to flip it into flower. Now you have to add amendments to there because there's nothing left in it to...
Back up just a little bit. When you say you planted it for a couple months and it took off monstrous, do you know what's in that mix that makes that plant grow?
Synthetic salts.
It's pretty much what it is, but it's ammonium nitrate. So they spray this ammonium nitrate on sawdust, and that ammonium nitrate is like acid on a fucking slug. So think of the organic and biology that's in there. It's killing. They put that on there. You can throw a pile of that. It's called nitralized sawdust is what the industry calls it as an amendment to mix it, and that's what they buy. Roots Organic, a bunch of them do that as an amendment, and that's their nitrogen pack. And then they tell you they put a bunch of guanos and they do other stuff. But they don't put shit on it. That's what it is, and that's the reason the difference between a good quality soil and them. And you just explained it as it shot up and it grew some veg and it did really well. But the thing it's missing is that now, like if you grew in my soil or some good soil, it's not always my soil, but the difference between mine, you're asking me, and Fox Farm and all the case studies, Fox Farm with ammonium nitrate in the soil, that plant will shoot up really quick. It grows quick, and it's for tomato plants. Just call it tomatoes. Let's do a tomato, but same thing with regular cultivars. As it shoots up really quick, and it puts off a few tomatoes, and the wind comes and that plant has no structure, and it falls over, and it's lanky, right? My soil versus the same tomato plant, you got a fucking heavy stalk, you got this plant that just fucking sits up and does its thing, and it's putting off tomatoes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the difference, and why does mine do that? Because I have a living soil concept behind it. I want you to grow with bacteria. I want you to grow with fungi. I want you to do everything that is healthy in that plant. The last thing you want to do is feed ammonium nitrates in a tomato to your kids at the dinner table. If you once you know kind of thing. You know? So.
All right, let me stop this for a sec, because the rest of these are going to be commercials that are intersewn between the next video we doing, and it's like an hour-long video, so I got 2 things to go back to ahead of time, and then I got a few things to go to afterwards. You dig? But you know that's what's wrong with legal weed. Shouts out to the video. Let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome to Factually. I'm Adam Conover. Thanks for joining me on the show again. You know, one of the biggest changes in my lifetime in this country has been the legalization of marijuana. Along with gay marriage, it's the change to the country that seemed the most unimaginable when I was in high school, but that seemed to progress more swiftly than anyone anticipated. Now,
it did take a couple decades. In the 90s and aughts, there was the growth of medical marijuana legislation. The idea was that weed was something for grandmas with glaucoma, people on chemo, and AIDS patients, and it was sold as serious medicine. But starting in 2012, Oregon and Washington became the first states to legalize recreational marijuana. Now, people had been using marijuana for fun for thousands of years, but now they could do so legally in America in places like Bend, Oregon, the party capital of the Pacific Northwest. Cannabis legislation has only gained steam since then. Today, it's legal in 24 states and the District of Columbia, despite still being illegal federally. 54% of Americans can go to a store and buy some weed. That is a huge change. And the justification for that legalization was strong. There are a lot of really great arguments for it, and not just from cartoon stoners saying it's going to chill everybody out. The hope was that legalizing weed could stop us from sending low-level drug offenders to prison, destroying lives and costing all this money, and that instead states could start collecting taxes on this enormous market and use it to bring order to an unruly and sometimes violent black market drug industry worth billions. So let's be clear, on the whole, legalization has been a good thing. It is good that we are sending less people to prison for weed than we used to, but that doesn't mean that legalization has gone well across the country. There have been a lot of fucking problems that have not been reported on in the press, and on the show today, we're going to talk about them. In California, where I live, legalization has led to waves of corruption, with small-town politicians demanding bribes for store permits. It's also led to the regular abuse of workers who often toil in a legal gray area, and the legal market has definitely not led to the eradication of the illegal market with all of its attendant violence and, yeah, a lot of people still going to prison. And most importantly, as my guest today will explain, we have actually not seen the safety of marijuana increase as a result of legalization. In fact, you cannot trust the safety of what is in your vape, even if you buy it from a legally regulated dispensary here in California. These results are shocking. Everyone who uses marijuana needs to hear about them, including me. I'm a user myself, and that is what we're going to get into on today's episode. But before we do, I want to remind you, if you want to support the show and all of the fascinating stories we bring you week in, week out, stories that are not covered anywhere else, at least in not such a charming and entertaining fashion, head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. $5 a month gets you every single episode of the show ad-free. We'd love to have you join as a part of our community. And if you want to come see me do comedy live around the country, please head to adamconover.net for my tickets and tour dates. On February 21st, I'm going to be in Chicago at the historic and gorgeous Talia Hall. On February 23rd, I'll be in Boston at the Wilbur. I cannot wait for these shows. After that, March 6th through 8th, I'll be in Burlington, Vermont, at the Vermont Comedy Club. Then I'm heading to London to the Leicester Square Theater on March 22nd. Amsterdam on March 26th at Boom Chicago. I know it's called Boom Chicago, but it is in Amsterdam. If people in Amsterdam know Boom Chicago. People in Chicago, do not try to go to the show. It is in Amsterdam. I'm not trying to confuse you. After that, I'm headed to Providence, Vancouver, Eugene, Oregon, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and new dates are being added all the time. Head to adamconover.net for all those tickets and to see my most current dates. And now, let's get to this week's interview. See, weed is legal, but that does not mean it is clean. And today, I'm talking to a journalist who has published an expose showing alarming levels of pesticides in cannabis products at dispensaries across California. Her work is a really important starting point for examining the broader challenges of legalization and how we can do it a lot better than we have been. So please welcome Los Angeles Times investigative reporter Paige St. John. Paige, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
So look, weed's been legal for a little while in California. I remember growing up, we always thought that would be a great day when weed was legalized. We'll stop. Everyone will be kind to each other because we'll just all be high all day long, and it's safe and it makes you feel good, etc. And of course, a lot of people were going to prison who shouldn't have been for possession or selling of what is one of our more harmless intoxicants. At least that's what we believed at the time. What has the reality been of legalization in California? And maybe if you can speak to the rest of the country as well, because I know California led the way on this.
Right, because where California leads, the nation goes on this. And this is a national issue. It's not the weed that's the issue, right? It's the derivatives in the products that are being made, such as distillates that are used for vaping. And what we found, just in a nutshell, is that when with legalization came this runaway market, everybody who could was growing in large quantities and began just using pesticides, commercial chemicals out the wazoo for this intense cultivation, trying to squeeze 3, 4, 5 crops out of a single year. And when you take that cannabis, you shouldn't smoke it as is when it's been sprayed with stuff like that. But when you distill it down, make vaping products, you wind up concentrating the harmful pesticides, carcinogens, endocrine disruptors, chemicals known to affect your intelligence, your fertility, cause birth deformities and neurologic damage that will haunt you then, with Parkinson's and things like that. And that stuff is showing up in pretty large quantities in the supply chain. Whether it's the legal market or the illegal market, to me it's one market, and that's what we found.
But it's showing up in both legal and illegal weed in California. This is your investigation. What did you find in terms of the amounts that were present?
Right. So we found levels of some chemicals at a point where you would feel it, whether it's burning in the throat, coughing, burning eyes, irritation in the lungs. We even some of the rolling papers were contaminated with, an ingredient in the original disinfectant Lysol.
Wow.
Just really screaming high levels in some of the rolling papers on some of the top shelf cannabis brands. But for the pesticides and stuff like that, the majority of the stuff we found is at a threshold where you're not going to notice the effects right away. And when they do appear, you may not know the cause. Things that a decade, later may show up. And we're already living with that. We live with pesticides in our food supply and around us, and we're already seeing the effects. Study, for instance, of people living in the Central Valley in California and the high rates of Parkinson's disease, that has been tied and associated with pesticide use.
Wow.
So, but then you add cannabis on top of that, and you have reason for concern.
Well, as you say, pesticides are a part of, our food system as well. Is it worse in the cannabis industry than in the food system?
Well, here's why it's worse. Because when we published this, I got a lot of pushback from people who said, yeah, but, my Cheerios has more of this or that. Well, no. The levels we were finding exceeded what are allowed in most food products. But 2, you're not smoking your Cheerios.
Well, you don't know anything about my breakfast routine.
I hope I hope you're not smoking your Cheerios. Let me say that. The reason being, you don't want to smoke pretty much anything. Smoking in general is not a great idea because you're inhaling from your lungs. It goes into the bloodstream, from the bloodstream to the brain and your organs. There's no filter. If you're eating gummies, and ingesting in other ways, your liver and kidneys are going to carry the burden.
Oh, interesting.
And they'll suffer for that, but they will cleanse it, and you're not going to get that immediate impact in the brain.
That's their job of the liver and kidneys is to clean things that are ingested, but there is no liver or kidneys for the lungs, is the point.
Right. Well, I mean, and if you think why you're inhaling, because you are going to feel the effects. It's going to give you the pleasant effect because you're inhaling it.
Yeah.
Well, the bad stuff is going direct to the brain, too.
Why are pesticides being used so much for marijuana? Because, my understanding was that, this goes back to me reading Michael Pollan's Botany of Desire like 20 years ago. He writes about how, the illegality of weed pushed it indoors to hydroponic growing, where it's these grow rooms that are inside. And again, you're going to correct me where I'm wrong, but, it's these sort of isolated, basements or whatever, right? You wouldn't imagine there's a lot of pests in that scenario when they're being grown in a grow room. So why do they need the pesticides?
Yeah, well, the grow rooms. Well, first of all, it's just the intensity of cultivation, whether it's indoor or outdoor, and a lot of the originals, the OGs, like to say, they're sun-grown outdoor plants that are spaced. They wouldn't have to spray them a lot, hopefully. And but when you start crowding plants in an indoor grow room, it's a really ripe environment for molds. If an aphid gets in there, you've got a million aphids immediately. The spider mites and the whole. So
it's like a petri dish because there's so much all in one place.
Yeah, it's a really nasty environment, and the cannabis, the bud is a very tightly packed. It's.
It is tight packed, but like she did say, that's the only bad thing about indoors. Indoors, if you don't have a bug problem, you're good. But if you do get a bug problem, yeah, better stay up on that IPM player. Shout out to the IPM videos. Higher Desert Exotics did one not too long ago. I suggest you go back and pull it up because that's the homies. I would review it, but hey, I already watched it.
It's inviting for all of this stuff, the spores and everything to take hold. And so some growers for a while had a very common practice that they would grow clean, spray nothing, and then in between harvests, bug bomb the room. And what they didn't realize is the drywall is just soaking all that stuff up.
Wow.
And then during growing season, when you get temperature fluctuations, the drywall literally breathes or exhales these chemicals out. And cannabis is a super absorbent plant. It has been used to clean up toxins in the environment because it is so good at accumulating everything in the environment that it just takes it in and it concentrates it. So the combination of those two practices, but that's just one example. You've also got.
Yeah, that's one good example. Let's go to commercial though, because we still got to pay bills in this piece. Shout out to having to pay them bills. Let's see, we ain't gonna worry about that one. Well, I ain't got too much bill paying videos left, so shout out to the big homie because we gonna kick it with a beat real quick and go back into the video. See if this goes right. Live testing in the field, baby. Either we make it happen or we don't, right? Be a second to roll up. Hopefully you got one ready. It is your morning sesh with your boy on Sundays. Hey, y'all know we gonna keep it popping all week, so we got the Rumble video recording. I kind of posted yesterday's video late as fuck, but hey, it might have been the right time for the right place. Either way, y'all know to go check that out. I gotta sweep my floor, rolling all them damn blunts for dad. Got me some tobacco guts everywhere. This is why I go with the natural wild hemps. That way I don't have no guts. Okay, so that did go back to that video.
Plant.
That's
It
what's up.
has been used to clean up toxins in the environment because it is so good at accumulating everything in the environment that it just takes it in and it concentrates it. So the combination of those two practices, but that's just one example. You've also got, if you use recycled wood, it turns out a lot of that has chlordane, stuff that's been banned in the United States for half a century, and being taken up by the plants. That's among the chemical. We found DDT not in use, chlordane not in use. You know, stuff that you wouldn't realize is still out in the environment destroying up the plants.
It's not in use in the United States. It's been banned, DDT, but you found it in the marijuana. How did it get there?
Yeah,
it was in what?
Here's the theory on those, is that there are some very large-scale growers. They're growing cannabis like it was corn. I mean, fields of cannabis in the Central Valley, where there's a history of heavy pesticide use. So it's in the soil. And if they're not using these chemicals, when the wind blows dust, it's essentially exposing the plants to that. So that's the theory. There's actually a one of the testing labs. They get into the forensics of where did the contamination come from, and that's one of the things they like to do. They're like detectives, and they'll go to a cannabis grow and climb around in the air ducts. That's a great place for a lot of these chemicals to hide, and they'll help find the source. Because invariably, we had brands and growers say, well, we didn't use this, we didn't. Sometimes I think they're honest, that they actually didn't. Other times I think they're just lying, but there's an ability to trace it. There are. I heard many stories about where did it come from, including it came from the mother plant, and they cut and they sprayed that, and then they cut that into baby clones, and they grew the clones. Well, the clones grew up into plants, and they still had the chemicals in them. So
let's talk about the legalization of it, because one of our ideas about legalization is that we're going to regulate the market. It's one of the bedrock purposes of the government in the United States, at least since the beginning of the 20th century, has been regulating the things that we put into our bodies. I've covered in my own work, all the numbers of people who would die from tainted food prior to Teddy Roosevelt, signing a bunch of bills that, created the FDA and et cetera, meat inspection across the country. And this is like something that, hey, we're not perfect at it, but a lot less people die than used to. And so it's something that people kind of expect, from as skeptical as people are of the government, they say, okay, USDA inspected, they know what that means. They think there's a basic level of regulation. And to be honest, I would carry that myself when I went into a California dispensary. Okay, great, this has its package, it's got a barcode, and someone somewhere has inspected it and regulated it to make sure that it's safe. So I'm not going to start by asking, how did all these pesticides get through the regulation? What I want to know is, how is marijuana regulated in California? Are they looking for, health effects at all?
Right. Well, it's because there's something that you just mentioned that you touch on, is that we know how to do this. I mean, that's whether it's meat or milk or food. And so you trust that the government does this because you see it happen all the time. You see lettuce recalls, you see, so you have the proof of that there is a government system. So when it comes to cannabis being government approved, with the California label, and even a $5 million advertising campaign to promote legal weed as safe weed, you think, okay, I don't need to ask anymore. The system California set up was a self-policing system. The state said we have the toughest regulations in the nation. That's not quite true, but they did test for say that cannabis should be tested for 66 chemicals. It was up to private labs to do that testing. and say, okay, it passed. It's got what we deem safe levels of these 66 chemicals, or no levels at all, and then it got on the shelf, and that was the system for 5 years. Not a single pesticide recall.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good, because in the meantime, people know black market weed, illicit weed is must be full of nasty stuff. It used to be. I mean, there was that legacy that's part of the sales pitch to voters to create a legal market. It's like Hemingway talked about, drinking in a clean, well-lit space, and we want that. We don't necessarily want other dangers.
Yeah, so we were aware that, black market marijuana, despite being it's a very mature black market, it was one that, like, people sort of knew how to access. I feel like, people have been buying weed for a long time. Pretty routine as far as black markets go. But hey, there's no regulation, and there's dangerous stuff in there. After legalization, did the weed get better or worse?
It only got different. And this is an interesting finding, because the belief, we ran these stories out over the course of a year. And in the first stories in June, we just tested legal products. And then in the results that we got in December, and we put all of the results up. You can look up. You don't have to go to our paywall. It's up on GitHub if you want. But if you go to the LA Times site, you've got like 598 different products that we've tested, and you can look see, including some of the popular illicit brands. And I think the contamination rate's about the same. But what we found is that the illicit products had chemicals that are easy to spot by the labs. But, it's on the state list of 66 chemicals, and they're easy to find in the labs and blow the whistle. The legal weed, a third of it had a chemical that's not on the state list, and pymetrozine. And it just looked to me as though growers had just simply switched. When they knew the state was looking for something on the 66 level list, they went to products that were not.
Of course they would, right? There's something that's on the banned list, and so...
Yeah, and the aphids don't care. I mean, you need something to kill the aphids. And the aphid, when cultivation took off, like over in on the coast area, there was so much cannabis cultivation, the aphids were having a heyday. There was like weed everywhere, and so the population just was out of control, and it became a real problem for the farmers, because these are just farmers, and they looked for a product that was good, that wasn't on the late state ban list, and so they reached for these other products. It's a felony to use those other products, but they were using it so frequently, they were actually reporting the use to the state, and the state wasn't noticing.
Wait, sorry, hold on. It's a felony, but they were using it.
Yeah.
What are the chemicals on the list?
No, it wasn't on the list. Pymetrozine. So pymetrozine is not on the list of 66, but under federal law, it is a felony to use a controlled pesticide in a way that's not been approved. And this is a restricted pesticide, pymetrozine. It's not like there are some general use things anybody can use on anything, right? And people around the house. Neem oil, a lot of the organic things, for instance, are in that category. But pymetrozine is not. In fact, pymetrozine is banned in many countries, and it's still used heavily in the United States legally, like on potatoes. You're not smoking your potatoes either, I hope. So,
I mean, you can turn a potato into a bong. I think. You can turn an apple to a bong.
You can
turn a potato.
ferment it.
Yeah, you can drink it, and it turns into vodka.
Yeah.
Then you could infuse some cannabis into the vodka. Folks, if you've listened to this show before, you've heard about our next sponsor, because they are one of my favorites. This is a product that I've been using for years, and in fact, the only reason...
If they're going to try to slide an ad in, I got one for you. Speaking of information, shouts out to Wall Street Trapper, because, that's what we believe in. Spreading information.
get some insider information, that's illegal. I mean, we're gonna get some tips and some pointers. You got no insider information. I got quad on that inside the trade. I don't know shit. Nah, they locked Martha Stewart up for that. White women can't get away with it. Nobody can.
What did he say?
She had some friends who told her some
What
shit
up, Michigander?
and she moved some money around and she wasn't supposed to do that.
Yeah, right.
Just lose the money like everybody. I mean, more money after that too. She went crazy. She stayed up, bro. She's so freaky. What? How you know? She freaky though. You didn't see the post when she was talking about how they came and installed her pool. Oh, this shit legendary. It don't sound nothing like no goddamn.
That's dope. We already saw this video, but you know, right back to where we was.
Potato into a bog. I think. You know, you can turn an apple to a bog, you turn a potato.
Ferment it.
Yeah.
Crops. For years, I went into the database. I found it right there, and I'm like, and I call up the county ag commissioners, and I said, "Did you know you have these like 5 farms, and they're spraying, 33 times a year? They're spraying pymetrozine, and they hadn't noticed."
Wow. Were they concerned? What are the effects of smoking pymetrozine?
Pymetrozine is a known carcinogen.
Okay.
And there are some other health effects off the top of my head, but we actually put a ton of health information on all of the I think I'm trying to remember how many different chemicals we found. An amazing number of different chemicals, but pymetrozine topped the list, and a lot of citations on the academic research backing that up.
And it's still being used now. You found it actively in the testing you're doing.
Actively, like as of June, when the first story came out, and some pymetrozine had showed up, and the cannabis labs had never even thought to look for stuff that wasn't on the list of 66. They thought that we had done a lot to clean up the market. They were surprised at the number of, I call them off-list chemicals, that showed up in the supply chain.
So why are these chemicals not on the list? I mean, surely when California put the list together, there was some criteria that they used. Do some folks think that these chemicals are not as big a concern, or what?
No. You wish. No, the history, it turned out, is that state pesticide regulators were asked early on, make some recommendations to the cannabis regulators. What should we look for? We don't want to have too many things on the list because that will be too hard or too expensive. So they copied the list from Oregon because that's got a long growing history and was in the game before California was in terms of legal weed, and looked around at other states, and that's pretty much the list that they started with. Things that other people were looking for and had found. Not until, and then in the ensuing years, the pesticide regulators again and again said, we ought to revisit that list. And cannabis regulators ignored them. And until we published our findings, nobody revisited the list. There is now a new proposed list. They're going to add 10 more chemicals. That's the suggestion at this point to the watch list, but not everything that we found, and they're leaving some important things off. We found smuggled pesticides from China that are carbamates that are highly toxic, and those are not all on the list, for instance, on the proposed list.
There's smuggled pesticides from China?
Yeah, these are carbamates that are not in use in the United States.
What is a carbamate?
That's a good question. That's a chemical term. I'm trying to think of some of the known carbamates. Some of the worst nasty pesticides from the 1960s that we got rid of. Those are carbamates.
Okay, so it's a classification of chemicals, some of which is used as pesticides. Okay, thank you.
Right, and it's a class that can kill you. And
got it.
The nice thing about the carbamates, if there is a nice thing, is that you can recover if you catch it soon enough with blood tests. So here's a catch about protecting public safety in weed. Our regulators, our law enforcement people knew they were encountering this in the field when they were doing slash and burn operations on illegal grows. They were finding these chemicals in use on many of these illicit operations in Northern California, in the high desert, over in San Bernardino, and those areas, in the warehouse grows in Oakland. It's like all over the state, this stuff is popping up. So they began or continue doing blood testing to make sure that they're not, that the law enforcement officers on the raids are not accumulating toxic levels of carbamates in their system. No word to the public, no warning.
Wow.
No, and some of these growers that they shut down, they knew were selling into the legal market, which is why for me, it's not that there's a black market and a legal market or an illicit market. It's all one market. You see stuff moving in and out so much back and forth that and people are still buying on the street.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, people are buying in both markets, and I think that I believe I've read that the legal market has not incredibly disrupted the illegal market, right? There's still it's still happening.
I think the legal market has really just expanded the cannabis, right? It gave hedge funds an opportunity to play a very lucrative game that they wanted a seat at the table, but and it's now what do they call it? Canna curious, I think is the term, right?
People who are kind of curious, I guess, bringing new users in.
Yeah.
Right, so you've got people who, you have the existing illegal market, then the legal market brings in a whole lot of new people, and some of those people can also go to the illegal market, right, because it brings in new users, so it expands cannabis use for everybody. Okay, so there are these chemicals that are not on the list that you feel should be, that are carcinogens, that are in both the legal and illegal weed that we buy, and are concentrated in the vape oil. How bad of a health effect are we talking? I mean, you're saying that these are carcinogens, etc. Do you have any, is there any projection of, how many excess deaths we might see or anything like that? Because it's dose and quantity and over what duration, right?
Yeah, dose is the poison, right?
Yeah.
No, and I found nobody doing that research, and that's a concern. I feel like it's like the early days of tobacco, where there's no money, no government research, especially because it's not federally legal. That shuts down a lot of the ability to even look at this. If it were federally legal, you're going, right, the light bulb. That's one of the big things missing here.
Right. Normally, the feds would regulate something like this and would set the standard that the states would abide by as well. But actually, the entire industry is still completely illegal federally, even though it's not really being enforced the way it once was. I guess we'll see how the new administration handles it.
And I've got researchers, academics, who say there's no money to research this.
Like, literally, not even no money from capitalism. You can't get any money anywhere because of the illegality of it.
Right. Exactly.
You can't apply for a federal grant because your research would break the law.
Exactly.
Got it. Well, so I guess my question is how concerned should I be? Look, I'm a weed user, and I'll tell you, I don't do vape oil, because I'm always like, look, there's a bunch of other shit when you're using a vape, using an oil vape that you're vaporizing that I don't need to be vaporizing that other stuff. So I do a dry herb vape, right, where it just vaporizes the oils in the leaf, grind up the leaf, put it in the little chamber, and then it heats it up to like 380 degrees Fahrenheit, so it doesn't burn. It just vaporizes the oil in the leaf. I'm like, this to me seems like the safest, most organic method of weed consumption by my own lights. And it also happens to hurt my throat less, less than smoking a joint,
If
say,
not,
or
get you a
edibles
monetization
last
coach
too
so we
long.
can show you
know,
how
I'm
it
like,
could
I'm
be.
not trying to be high for 5 hours here. And it depends on what you eat, etc. I like just having a little bit. So that's my routine, right? Do that a couple times a week. How concerned should I be? And by the way, I go to a dispensary near my house that claims to be vertically integrated. They grow it themselves and they sell it in that same shop. I don't think it's not like a big grower, right? So how concerned should I be in that scenario?
Well, in everything you said, the only thing that really made a big difference was that you know your grower. And it depends how much you trust that grower, but of your single source, basically. So so you're putting all of your chips on one slot, but it's if you've got trust in that grower and their practices, you're still inhaling, and whatever's on that leaf and that oil, it is going into your system, and so if it's clean, it's probably as good as you're gonna get in that scenario. One of the things we found is that even some of the big name brands that promote organic style vape products, mix it with a generic base oil so that they get consistency from batch to batch to batch to batch, right? It's and that those vape products then begin to look like hot dog, what they call it, pink slime, the stuff that goes into hot dogs.
Mystery meat,
There is one of the ones we looked at. Yes, the name on the box was an organic farm, but it had been mixed with this generic oil that had stuff from like 300 other farms, and nobody could tell us the quantities of how much of this and how much of that, and so that general nature of not knowing your source and just it kind of being mystery meat was the most troubling for me. Of how do you bring product safety to that, to that kind of arena.
Right, because it's a bulk commodity that they're mixing together. You're saying, and it's not just the base oil; it's like the THC containing oil that they're mixing it with.
Yeah, it's the actual distillate. It's not the other carrier oil that they would mix with it, so you get some viscosity. But they want to make sure they have like consistent THC levels. And so even when they're saying that, this is a box that had the name of an organic farm on the box, like, this is where this vape comes from, that farm, but only some of that vape came from that farm, and the THC oil distillate, it turned out there'd been an error, and they didn't even know where it all came from, because when it was entered in the state's tracking system, California has this very expensive seed to sale kind of tracking system that everybody's required to participate in. It carried the records for a different company's product. So it was like nobody had caught that, and that kind of stuff we found goes on so often that the track and trace system was not reliable for doing any kind of where did this come from, investigation afterwards.
Wow, because there's some mix up in the supply chain, and that happens so often that the records are not reliable.
Willful, it could be accidental, it could be willful. There's so much effort to, that's how they're also using this system to bring illicit product into the legal supply chain, and for legal product to magically disappear into the ether, into New York and markets around the United States, right? Because cannabis is not supposed to cross state lines. You can get California weed anywhere. So,
including weed grown for legal sale, not just the illegal stuff is being.
Yeah. Legal weed. I mean, it's a market, and so product goes where the product is, where prices are high, right? Mm-hmm. It's supply and demand, economics.
So again, for the average user in California, you said you tested I assume many different kinds of weed. You tested flower, you tested
we
oil.
tested some flower, mostly vapes though, because of our concern that is where people are most at risk, especially young people, because you've got these candy flavored vapes being pushed.
Yeah. Vape oil, like oil cartridges. I want to distinguish that from, there's other types of vapes as well, but you're talking about the oil cartridges.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so that was our primary focus, but we did test some flour, and we just some pre-rolls. I think 1 or 2 gummies, but not a lot in the gummy world, because that is a whole enchilada on its own in terms of how those are made.
Naturals.
And
put an ad right there
difficult
myself,
for labs to actually test because of the other things in them. It's just chemically difficult for laboratories to
because there's more going on. There's a lot of sugar and sucrose and et cetera in there.
Exactly. Exactly. And we just wanted, when we realized regulators really had no clue, we're basically setting up our own independent testing program, that the state's not doing, and nobody else in the United States is doing either. So there's been a lot of interest in this work. One of the things that it gave rise to, and because if you didn't have your vertically integrated shop to go to, and you want to at least take some steps to try to be safe, is the word of this was like wildfire in the cannabis industry, and it kicked off some efforts in the some private sector efforts by leaders in cannabis to find a way to certify that this is safe. So there's a certification programs that have started. There's one called Echo, for instance. You had some of these major dispensary brands like Catalyst, begin testing everything on the shelf, and requiring stickers. But it also created a market for cannabis that has been tested for all these other pesticides, not just the 66. So while state regulators are still kind of thinking about, expanded testing and changing how this is done, the private market is just raced to get ahead of this before it blows up. Because I think they know that consumers care a lot about this. A lot of the educated people like yourself, and they know they should worry.
Well, the health halo really matters to people, and so many of the dispensaries, I think in every state, present themselves as being, it's almost medicine, right? This is healing, yes. This is good for you. It's plants, etc. I think they know if they start getting the reputation of, that's full of pesticides, they're going to have problems. I don't talk about this much on the show, but I love styling myself. Nothing gets me more jazzed up than finding a new wardrobe staple that reinvents all of my potential fits. It's just a fun way to check.
That were at levels that exceeded a federal threshold of concern. I think that's the official term for single use, for single exposure.
Wow.
But those were few.
Okay.
There was one brand, Backpack Boys. I don't mind naming names because that's the whole point, right? I mean,
they don't sound very trustworthy. The Backpack Boys. Hey, get some. You want some weed? I got this from the Backpack Boys.
I think there are some brands out there that really cultivate the bad boy image, and kind of street, gang kind of reputation.
What's the problem? It's just a Backpack Boy weed. So the Backpack Boys were the worst.
Oh my God, there were dozens of pesticides. It was like, how did a single product get so contaminated? It's like, send me all your contaminated weed. I'll make, I don't know. But,
maybe one of the jars broke in the backpack, and it kind of chemical everywhere.
I actually didn't smoke some Backpack Boys
it turned out the state
that's that bullshit right there. Yeah.
got into gear.
Shouts out to the Cure Lounge.
This was
When we was
after
going out there,
our
I
June
ran
story
into
and
their
went to the
squad.
manufacturing shop down in the LA area that was actually making this in a back room behind a dispensary. Where these were vape sticks. So you'll see a name like Backpack Boys. It doesn't have a California cannabis license. It's just a name. It's a brand. It's this was a huge roadblock in doing the investigative reporting on this because they're just names. They're like clothing lines,
Right.
and they doesn't really tell you where the weed came and who's making it and where was it made. And so some of these Backpack Boys vapes these sticks were actually made by Kinder Understanding something, and it was like Kush, I think is what the acronym was, and it was in the back of a dispensary.
Kindness, understanding, sanity, and healthiness. Kush.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, no, it all adds up. Yeah, I feel very safe
of course. Now. So you trust that, and they had synthetic THC in some of the stuff made by that
synthetic
back
THC.
shop. Yeah, that's we found a couple of things beyond pesticides that are really troubling. One is synthetic THC that is essentially it begins its life someplace along the hemp chain and CBD, but then is converted in a lab multiple times through exposure to harsh acids and other chemicals so that it looks like Delta 9, but it's not the same Delta 9 that's made by the plant. And and so it can test like Delta 9. State regulators, it's not legal, but state regulators wouldn't necessarily pick up on it. And we have a lab, they developed this test for Michigan, and then they did the test for us here in California, and we began seeing synthetic THC. Its health effects are unknown. It contains a lot of byproducts that are not intended, and the safety of those is unknown. But it is so much cheaper to make than the plant-grown stuff that there's a market incentive. And I think they were cutting the pesticide-laden oil with the synthetic oil to make the pesticide-laden oil pass state tests.
I mean,
it's like a cutting agent.
The point of legalizing a drug and regulating it is so you don't have people cutting it with shit anymore. You know, like.
Oh, we did find vitamin E too, by the way.
Vitamin E.
Vitamin
that sounds
E
good
oil.
for you. What is?
Okay, so do you remember the vape crisis of 2019? People were dying. We had like 8 people die in California. We had people across the United States. They were vaping. It was called the vape crisis. It was linked to vaping, not just cannabis, but tobacco products. But in the end, the regulators said they thought that the evil was illicit cannabis vapes. You know, so they took the blame for the whole thing, and they linked it to cutting the cannabis oil with vitamin E acetate, which looks like cannabis oil, acts like cannabis oil, but you know it was a way to cut the oil, and and then COVID came along and that went away, and there was a worry about, well, maybe it actually wasn't vitamin E, maybe those were early COVID deaths. So that went away, that problem did. But I went to a illicit store down on Whittier Boulevard in LA and picked up some stuff there and sent it to the lab, and it had vitamin E oil in it.
Wow. And that was purchased legally or illegally?
That's illegal. That's okay. One of those unmarked shops with the green neon cross. You know, you go down Whittier at night and look for the green neon cross, and you can find these shops.
I thought the green neon
speakeasy. You had to knock on a black. There was actually under the sign that said "No drugs," spray painted on the black wall. You bang on it, and this black piece of plywood slides over and there's a woman there and you say, give me some vapes.
I would have thought that a green neon cross would mean that it's legal because they're advertising.
No, it's the universal symbol, right?
I know, but it's
of health, of pharmacy, right? It's that whole weed is healthy for you, and this is this is a medicine, and there is, this shouldn't take away from that whole reason that people turn to cannabis instead of alcohol or other drugs, right?
all that's still true in your view of the medicinal value, pain relief. People, I remember the part of the arguments for cannabis legalization, glaucoma, stuff like that, and then just a better way to inebriate yourself than booze and many other drugs in terms of its overall health effects, right?
Recreation, stress. My mom was going through hospice in December, and in her last couple of weeks, I was giving her drops under the tongue.
And it was helping her.
Yeah, it just helped. In her case, not pain. I think the scientific research, the medical research shows that for pain control, the problem is that it comes and goes so fast that it's not really effective for controlling pain. But when you are 83 and you know you're dying,
it's nice to be high at that time. It helps you have an expansiveness of mind. So, if all those arguments are true for legalization, those original arguments that we were making 20 years ago about, hey, it would be good for society if weed were legalized, it seems as though something has gone wrong in the logistics and the details of how weed was legalized. Is that the case? I mean, again, if people are cutting vape oil with other vape oils, that sounds like something went wrong somewhere along the path. So how did legalization get so fucked up?
Because of half measures, because we promise one thing but we don't deliver, right? I mean, people in the cannabis industry are, outraged by this. They want more regulation. They say this is not fair because they're doing the right thing, and then other people come along and can do everything for less and don't care about health. There is a huge question of the immorality of putting toxic stuff on something someone's going to smoke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what more should the state be doing to stop this?
Other than doing their job in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it. We have the law. We have the regulation. We say thou shalt. And the question is, well, why aren't we enforcing that?
Yeah, I mean, California enforces many, many regulations.
Yeah.
It's, that's the main knock on California from someone in Texas. They'll say too many regulations, they're always breathing down your neck. So why did California drop the ball here?
Well, what I did find, and the regulators won't talk about this, the governor's office kind of like cracked down on releasing any public records. I got my requests were denied or delayed. No interviews, I counted on whistleblowers, people who put their state pensions at risk by talking to me and giving me information. But from what I can tell, the state viewed cannabis as, number one, a tax windfall, and number two, as a market to grow. And so the person in charge of the Department of Cannabis Control, the governor's cannabis czar, she comes from a background of economic development. And you see the resources of the agency put first. And in the one interview she gave me early on, she talked about how she wanted to set up the market first. At that point, I was asking her why wasn't she doing anything about the illicit operations that were out competing legal growers. And so I think the view was that we have to grow this market. We have to create this industry. And so you have state-sponsored market, and the money, $5 million, put into a promotion campaign to tell, people like you, go legal and smoke legal. They were on Facebook. These ads were all over social media. And at the same time, our first stories were running saying legal weed is not clean weed. So and it felt like they had to be drug kicking and screaming to the table to address what is in the very first sentence of the statutory authorization for the creation of the Department of Cannabis Control is public safety above everything else.
Yeah, and that was not what they were prioritizing.
No. And I don't know if they were naive and they thought, the industry will self-police and we don't need to. Or just willfully not, because there were whistleblowers. There were cannabis labs a year before us sending lab reports into the state on products that were dirty.
Wow.
And nothing happened. So the woman who was the head of the lab division has now got a whistleblower lawsuit. She was fired during the process of the reporting and has a whistleblower lawsuit out saying that they fired her because she threatened to, go outside the agency and tell other agencies about her concerns.
So they're actually firing whistleblowers.
That's her claim. What I did find is that after she was fired, they hired a private investigator who appears to have been hired to investigate her, or to find out if she was also talking to a certain reporter who was investigating things.
A certain reporter, I wonder who. Have you seen, now that, these reports of yours have been blockbusters, especially in the cannabis industry, have you seen a response from the government, from the state regulators about this?
Yeah, well, they won't talk to me, so there's that response.
But are they changing their ways at all? Is there
they are, absolutely. So the cannabis czar has told lawmakers in the state that this is stuff that they were intending to do already and had already in the works to do for months. They had told me the same thing a year ago, that they were going to look at a new list of what chemicals to test for instance. The problem is that a year passed and that didn't happen. And here we are in December and it still hasn't, or January, and it still hasn't happened. It's the slowness at which state government is moving. Private industry can move at lightning speed compared to regulators, and so I don't know where we will, if we were a year from now, still be in the same place. And if they make a new list, if it takes them a year to add 10 chemicals to the list, well, what are the next 10 chemicals going to be? Yeah. So until they get a same kind of program that they have for food, where they do, they shop in stores, they go to dispensaries, pull products off the shelf and test them and see what's there and independently double check. But when we started the reporting on this, the state cannabis division didn't have a lab of its own that could test for pesticides. Wow. Though it has spent millions of dollars to set one up. They are now borrowing the resources of other state agencies, which means those state agencies can't do their job to look for harmful chemicals in other products. So it's going to take more resources, I think.
Are there other states that are doing a better job? I mean, Oregon, Colorado, those have been states that have had legal drugs for a long
Michigan,
time.
For instance, Michigan looks for synthetic THC. That's why that ability to do that existed for us here in California. We're able to piggyback off of what Michigan had allowed. In terms of looking for pesticides, are other states doing better? No, I don't think so. I think these stories are a wake-up call for cannabis across the nation. I've had requests, coming in from other states, to talk about this. But other states are setting up their own independent labs. I think they're ahead of California in doing that.
It is a wake-up call, because I think that as much as we distrust the government, we also, at this point in American history, we also do trust it in a lot of ways that we don't think about, and I think this is one of them. When I go into a dispensary, I think generally this stuff is safe. And I've even seen, the sort of safety halo extend to other drugs. may have told this story on the podcast before, but about 9 months ago, I went to a friend's birthday party. He said, "Hey, you want an edible? We're all doing these edibles." And I said, "Oh, what is it? Weed?" He goes, "No, it's psilocybin and MDMA." And he hands me a sealed package. Sealed package. It looked like he had bought it at a California dispensary, and it was edibles. It said this much psilocybin and this much MDMA. And I said, thanks, but no thanks, because I've never seen such a product before. And, I'm the sort of person I think twice about it. But I felt when I saw the package, I was like, this looks legal. It has the appearance of a dispensary product. And I would think that 8 people out of 10 would look at it and go, oh, yeah, someone's probably inspected that, right? And I'm like, but I'm thinking psilocybin and MDMA in the same gummy? Like, who the hell made this, and how did they do it? And, it's worrying, right?
Yeah. Well, we bought
there's
stuff
been so many new products that have come out so quickly that we have an assumption. We have thrown the doors open so widely, and I think the end of the Prohibition era is good in many ways, but it brings along with it sort of an assumption about safety that is maybe unwarranted.
Oh, it does. When you can go into a gas station or a grocery store or a smoke shop and buy any of the kinds of products you're talking about.
It seems like there is a lot more confusion now in the legal drug marketplace. I was just in Toronto. I know it's a different country, but they've had legal weed there for a while. But there are all these businesses that have they were claimed to be selling mushrooms. They had giant paintings of mushrooms on the sides of the stores. And I would ask on stage, I was there doing stand-up comedy, I was like, are psilocybin mushrooms legal in Canada? And everyone would kind of go, kinda. And I was like, okay, but is that what they're selling at the store? And people were like, yeah, maybe. Like, no one was really sure what it was. You know what I mean? And I was like, I think I should be pretty clear. Is it lion's mane or is it psilocybin, right? Like, what are we doing here, guys? It's only in the last couple years that hemp like THC derived from hemp has become legal in basically every state to some degree, and so it feels like to me we're rapidly entering this new legal drug period in a way that feels like there's a lot of confusion, a lot of assumptions about it being safe, a lot of stuff is being presented to us as being safe, but it's actually kind of unclear where it's coming from, what is in it, and what it actually fucking is. Do you have this concern?
Oh, yeah, in a big way. In part because we also have this giant cavernous loophole with the FDA on supplements. When CBD, was kind of being peddled as a supplement, so that just means no regulation, no oversight, no health. Take your health in your own hands. I think we are in that Wild West period right now, and I think that the development of there's a lot that consumers actually steer this ship, but there's a lot that the private sector can help with, and I'm thinking of Whole Foods. I'm thinking of outlets, companies that do their own supply chain investigations, that take responsibility for what's in their supply chain, because it can't be just the government has a set of rules. The consumers have to set expectations. And when the consumers do that, then you'll see industry try to, because there's money to be made, try to meet those expectations. And regulators may be among the last to follow.
But we still needed, for the rest of our food supply, government regulation in order to secure it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We need it here, right?
Yeah. No, we absolutely need it here, and this is an area where one could argue that lack of federal on cannabis has really put people at risk, put young people at risk, especially because they're developing lifelong habits, and they still have developing brains, developing systems. I think I'm into potency,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the variable potency of different legal weed products.
Not only the variable, but the super high potency.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, I think you're making the best argument actually for federal legalization, which is not just the mass incarceration criminal justice piece of it. It's we need to set some nationwide standards, and the federal government. That's one of the things that it actually has been historically pretty good at, to its degree, right? To keeping the food supply, at least we only get E. coli outbreaks from spinach once every couple of years or so. We're not. It's not the mass source of death and contamination that it used to be, and that we're at that point of needing that from the feds. I'm glad to hear that it sounds like your reporting has spurred some awareness in California in both the industry and in the regulators, and hopefully, you said in a year, maybe things will be a little different. Hopefully 5 years from now, it'll be a little bit better. In the meantime, though, I'm sure there's folks listening who, in whatever state they live in, are legal weed users, as am I. How are there any practices that you suggest they can use to keep themselves as safe as possible in the meantime, other than abstaining entirely? Because of course that's the safest thing to do. But look, we all got to wind down at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, there are definitely things people can do. They can be aware of what they're buying, and they can look for, distillate. That term tends to cover the dirtiest bulk processed kind of oil, but there are other products out there that are that use vape still that are safer, and they can look for products that have been certified as either organic, or there's a CAT 4 phrase that it used to be called the LA Times 9, and now it's called CAT 4, but it's essentially product that's been tested for the pesticides that we found. And CAT 4 is short for category 4 because the state only went up to category 3, so it means one level higher than the state requires. And there are now products on the shelf that have CAT 4 sticker or label, or maybe your bud tender knows about it and can tell you. One thing you should do is just get in the practices of it when you're buying. Ask for a copy of the COA, and that is the testing certificate. It's required of every legal cannabis product, and I like the COA not because it'll tell you yes, it's safe, it doesn't have any pesticides, but it'll actually tell you where the weed came from, up in the top corner, and so you get past that brand name like Backpack Boys, and you start to know a little bit more about who actually made this.
I like that. So you ask for the COA, look for organic. That's a label that's worth looking for and is meaningful.
Certified, yeah. California has organic is a federal word, so I think it's called like organic or something like that, because you can't use the federal word on the not federal plant. But there's a California label. There's Clean Green certified. There's Eco certified. There's some of these private certification programs now. But to the consumer, if they think organic, they'll know it when they see it.
I hate to ask, are you yourself a cannabis user, knowing what you know, or do you now abstain? Or you have a method that you use to say, I feel okay if I shop here and I take these precautions?
I prefer mezcal.
Prefer, but okay. That's a diplomatic answer. Maybe you're like a restaurant reviewer. You can't say where you eat. Or you have to be a little secretive about it. Okay, we'll say no more. Very funny. Paige, where can people find you reporting on this? If they
LA
want to get into more.
LAtimes.com, Dirty Weed. So LAtimes.com/dirtyweed. That is part of a series we've been doing over the last 4 years called Broken Promises. And you'll find links there because I've got cannabis workers dying in the field, exploitation of cannabis workers, the broken promises about what it was going to do for equity, for instance, social equity, the broken promises of political corruption. We found lion's nest of political corruption in cannabis too. So all sorts of good things, very cannabis friendly things.
Well, I'm very happy to have you complicate the very simple story of the cannabis legalization and talk about the real issues that there are that we need to look at. It's been wonderful having you, and thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Keep the faith.
Once again, thank you to Paige for coming on the show. I love talking to investigative reporters because they are so full of information you cannot get anywhere else. If you want to support conversations like this, please head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. $5 a month gets you every episode of the show ad-free. Once again, for $15 a month, I will read your name in the credits of the show and put it in the credits of every single one of my video monologues. This week, I want to thank 90 Miles from Needles, Aaron Matthew, Andrew Harding, Alaska, Amy, and Thortron. I love reading all your weird, freaky nicknames on the show. If you want me to read your nickname, head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. Back the show at the $15 a month level. But of course, any amount you can support the show we'd be so grateful for it. If you want to see me on the road, Chicago, Boston, Burlington, Vermont, London, Amsterdam, Providence, Vancouver, Eugene, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, head to adamconover.net for tickets. I want to thank my producers, Sam Rama and Tony Wilson, everybody here at Headgum for making the show possible. And I want to thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on...
That was a good interview, though. A lot of information. Shouts out to the green background.
It's more fun being rich and on the street, bro. It's a lot of shit to do, so I look at it like they got more gangsters in the stock market. They got more gangsters in government than gangsters on the street. Right. They just got more information than us. Just like Chico said, we just don't got the information. So if we learn how to play that game,
What up,
I
Seymour?
use it the same way as I use the streets. And so what happens is once I started making money, I was like, oh, they they're not really smarter than me. They just got information. So the goal for me was to just go get some more information. And when you come from the street, you ain't scared to lose no money. That shit come with the game.
So when you say earlier, when you don't believe in what Google said, how do you get your information on that it's false information out there?
So I don't really go to Google for information. I go straight to the source. I go straight to them. So we gotta stop being scared to read too.
Every time I go to re-up, I get asked the same question without fail. Every single time I go to re-up, they say, hey, aren't you that guy Cupins that does a super lit Twitch stream every night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific? Can't I subscribe to you for free with my Amazon Prime? I'm kidding. They say the same old classic, so you more of an indica or sativa kind of guy? You like the indicas or you like the sativas? You're only allowed to like one. And look, no shade to the bud tenders, whatever. They're trained to ask at this point. That's part of the training. You ask them, do they want red or blue? And then start listing off numbers. I actually don't like this question anymore. I think it's doing a bad thing. I think overall every bud tender ever is asking this to the customers when they walk in, but I think it's giving people the wrong impression that there's two kinds of highs. Some people think that there's thousands of kinds. Every time you get a new strain name, you're gonna get a brand new journey and experience with that. But anybody that's been smoking pretty regularly knows that, like, the effects aren't gonna matter that much between the plants. And it's more about me, how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, and how I'm consuming it. And those classifications really come down to, well, was the plant a broadleaf plant or a narrow leaf plant? And I've talked to some growers that think in the future we're gonna shift away from the sativa indica model. And honestly, I can't wait. I get asked the question all the time, do you like indica or sativa? When I go into the shop, just give me whatever. I don't even care about the numbers. Most of the shops that you go to, unless they're carrying a bunch of third-party products, most of the stuff in there is about as good as the rest of it. It's not like they're growing one that's 30 times better than the others. There's some stuff that's better, obviously.
They usually charge more for it, but when I stopped being super picky, I started just getting better stuff overall. When you're really picky, you're trying to get the exact thing that you want, you're easily disappointed because you know what? They didn't have it that day. But asking that question every time somebody goes into the shop, are you more sativa, are you more indica? They tell you one's a head high, one's a body high. But like try to do a 1 gram dab of some sativa and not get couch lock. Go eat 1,000 milligrams of sativa edibles and not get couch lock. I mean, if you throw your couch away and you don't have a couch anymore, you technically can't get couch locked. But there's more to the effects than what was the name of the plant. There's more to the effects and what was the classification. Was it this or this? And also something that I usually like to point out is there's no way to actually tell scientifically if you have sativa or indica. There's no lab test for it. There's no way to measure it when they're telling you something 70% sativa. They're just saying that. They didn't do a lab test for it. They probably heard that from somebody else, or they crossed 2 plants and that was the rough math that they did on the other 2 numbers that they guessed. But most of the time, that number is just like an assignment. It doesn't mean anything. Not every 80% sativa is going to hit you the same. That's more of just how the plant looked when they were growing it. It's also wild, too, when you think about, like, cartridges. There's a lot of cartridges that are marked indica, sativa, hybrid. And a lot of the times, they all have the same distillate in them. They usually add terps to a lot of these, or just added different food-grade terps. Maybe they got the CDT. But, like, we're taking the same distillate, the same oil, and we're just adding slightly different flavors. And there's people out there that think that they're going to get wildly different effects from the same 2 distillates with slightly different flavors. Really, the effects that you're gonna feel, it's more dependent on you than what you're smoking. There's a lot of factors: your tolerance, your metabolism, how you're consuming it. Are you consuming a lot? Are you combusting it? Are you vaporizing? Are you dabbing it? Are you eating it? I've had many sessions where everybody's smoking the same thing. 6, 7, 8, 9 people all smoking the same thing. The same thing, but not everybody gets the same high. Not everybody's like, well, I'm couch locked and I have the munchies. Big body. It really is the high you're going to feel more dependent on you than what you're smoking. It's more dependent on how you're smoking it than what you're smoking, than the name of it, essentially. How you're consuming it is more important than the name of what you're consuming for how you're going to feel. You can take the same plant, the same Blue Dream, whatever Blue Dream makes me feel this way. You grow it, you harvest it a week earlier than you normally do, you're going to get different effects. You harvest it a week later than you normally do, you're going to get different effects. So I feel like when you go into the shop and they're like, hey, you more of a sativa or an indica kind of guy, they're oversimplifying the whole thing, which I understand. It helps them sell stuff faster. You go in there and you go, nah, I want an upper and not a downer. I want something that's going to make me hee and not ho. So I understand why it exists, but I don't like it. I can't wait till we get better classifications in the future that really help you understand what you're smoking. Either way, come get high with me on Twitch. The session starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. Have a lit day, my dudes.
Give it gas when I'm dipping competition, getting past, living fast, furious, staying on track, never worry when I'm spinning. Last better getting back, ride from a dog, alphabeted on us, you gon' get it back. Never split this pack. Whenever I witness cap, we ain't fucking with your fiction, facts, your conviction lacks. When I get up in my bag, I'ma spend. We ain't tripping off tax, clipping this tag, working on my wish list, cooking this cake. Let me flip this stack. You a flash in the pan, while you relaxing. I can't, my team in the pack, the sedan, putting tracks in the sand, pushing my craft at the fan, got the people all clapping their hands, putting cash in my brand, keeping my octane high, my graded premium, not 8-9 or 8-7, and when I run across state line, I'm 9-1, I gun it, clock great time when time come, disappearing in the dark horizon, way I cut turns, I'm as sharp as diamonds, got them on tilt like a car's alignment, this is raw refinement, not a hard assignment, I'ma give it gas, give it gas, bitch.
All right, I got you.
Anyways, y'all know we got the Rick and Morty poster in the background. We also got on our Rick and Morty PJs. Hopefully you're doing your damn thing because it is Sunday morning. But as they say, the king got on his robe. So, you know, we robing it up today. Hey. Shout out to the team DWC. Yeah, that's the Paradise slap right there, slapping on the pocket. Shouts out to that, you dig? You know what I'm saying? I might put a lighter in there, but we finna go show you what we just did in the tent. Shout out to the Rumble video because we finna end that part of that them. But they get to see something that y'all ain't seen yet. You know, we gonna end up celebrating that later on today, I guess, because you know we finally hit that 1,400 subs over here. Shouts out to the analytics in the studio. You know, we be in the studio all the time. You see what I'm saying? Let's see, we're at 35 views, it says, so that's good. Yeah, yesterday's video got 46, so you know we keeping it popping. So you know we like an hour and 40 minutes into the video, and y'all ain't seen no plants. Yeah, shout out to the studio side because they already got to see the plant roll in the background, but we cutting them off. Shouts out to y'all. Go to commercial, cut him off. Anyways, there you go. Boom. So now we can show y'all what we got growing on behind us. I just had to add some more water to that because it looks like it was a little bit low, so that's why they're a little bit angry with me. So hell, they're gonna do what they do anyways because they're gonna have plenty of food down there. So boom, there you go. Then moving forward through the house, tent 2's got all those buckets in it. Shouts out to them buckets. And then I just kept them in 10 too, right? They're clean and ready for use. As soon as the motherfuckers pop off, they go in. And then for the green room, oh, shouts out to the green room. Y'all know what's popping over here. We got a couple of the Bear Miller genetics. Shouts out to the auto. They're starting off. We're gonna have to watch here in a minute. But then you see the rest of the things we going on. Those are the Banner OG. Shouts out to that, right? Yeah, get that cord out the way. There you go. Nice little quick overhead. Then we got our dragon fruits that we started. It's funny how some of those are huge and some of them are small when they all started at the same time. But hey, that's how that goes, right? And don't see nothing popping up out of there yet. And then we've got the strawberries over here. And our flower's not flowering at the moment, so shouts out to it. It takes breaks from time to time. Hopefully it starts to actually stay a little bit healed up doing this thing though. Shouts out to the green room 2025. Y'all know we got more homework, so do your homework. You dig? But I will see y'all Wednesday at 6 because you know how we do. We got more stuff to get popping. Y'all ain't gonna have to be looking out for the updates.